He just posted that? No. Let me just verify if he just posted that. Oh, okay, no, he didn't. That was the post from before. Did you see the report that Trump wants Gulf countries that as part of this deal, after this deal, he wants the Gulf countries to join the Abraham's Accords?
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, Trump is so out of touch. So his sense of reality, his sense of what's happening, I think the world really does revolve around him. And to him, Abraham Accords are a great idea.
What do you make of what do you make of what we're seeing? Because we saw a deal seemed imminent just this morning, even yesterday and this morning. Then we started getting reports that after Trump spoke to Netanyahu, and Lindsey Graham and the others started being vocal. Then we're like, no, it's not there. We take a few days. Iranians are saying, yeah, we have two sticking points. The deal might fall apart. Even U.S. reports from Western media saying, yeah, there's sticking points right now. We're getting different reports. Will it include the unfreezing of assets now? Later, Iran says now. The U.S. says later. Will Iran have a toll booth to the Strait of Hormuz? Again, conflicting reports on that. And then the final sticking points, or two sticking points apparently now, are the frozen assets. Will the U.S. unfreeze them now or later? And the war in Lebanon. Apparently, Israel does not want to end that war. So they seem to be the two sticking points. And then Trump makes a post. If you can show it, it's on his Truth Social account, Mike, on Trump's Truth Social account. But essentially, it's actually on my Twitter account as well. Let me see. I was looking at it. But it's a post of a bomb and saying something. You saw that, just a bomb, and on it he wrote, "Thank you for your attention to this matter," or something along those lines.
Yeah, I saw that. I just saw that. That's and actually, I mean, that kind of reflects that his tone has changed, a little bit. But nothing that Trump says is connected to anything that I think is remotely related to reality. I mean, he talks about his negotiators. Who are doing it? I mean, nobody's over there. We have Pakistan, but are we still working with his buddy Witkoff and his son-in-law? Are they serving as the negotiators here at home, or is Vance still part of it? I mean, there's no real sense that actual negotiations are happening. It almost like Friday, late Thursday, Friday, they start talking, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, it's all good. We have this agreement. That it doesn't happen like that. There's no connection between Trump and the Iranian regime. There's no sense of even a diplomatic connection, and we already know there's no sense of trust. And I don't think there's been any trust building exercises that have gone on. Usually, if you're really working to have a ceasefire, if you're really working to have a memorandum of understanding, a peace agreement, in a case like this where we aren't trusted, the United States is definitely not trusted. Israel is definitely not trusted. And, and we in Israel, the United States government and Israel really don't like the Iranian government. So on both sides, you have this lack of trust, a lack of familiarity. Trump keeps saying, oh yeah, we killed the first two levels of their government, and now the guys they have are much more reasonable. He posted that for 4 or 5 weeks, this idea that we killed the hardliners and the reasonable ones are there. And that's the complete opposite. I'm not saying they're not reasonable, but we killed the guy with the fatwa on no nuclear weapons ever, because it was not according to the religion. So now we have guys who not only are probably going to abandon that, but we also killed the father of the guy that's currently in charge, and with his wife and kid. I mean, we've just
wife and kid,
created a situation where if we didn't have a friend in the first Ayatollah, we definitely do not have a friend in the current supreme leader. So because we have harmed him personally, we have offended him in many ways. But Trump's interpretation is, oh yeah, we killed the bad guys and there's some better guys there now. Well, they might be better guys. They may or may not be better guys, but Trump is not basing that on reality. He's just blurting out these things. So he's trying to create kind of a an appearance of
W- w-
he's in charge, and he's not. That's the problem. Trump is not in charge of this at all. He doesn't have any cards, as he likes to say.
Talking about trust, funny enough, you mentioned it as a report came in about 20 minutes ago. An informed source also told Tasnim that Iran holds no optimism towards the US, conducting all exchanges through the Pakistani mediator with deep skepticism. While no final agreement has been reached and challenges remain, the source stressed that even if an initial understanding is achieved, it would not signal any change in Iran's view of America or trust in the US commitments. Citing America's poor track record in negotiations, the source warned that Iran will closely monitor U.S. actions following any announcement and will retain its leverage to respond if the U.S. fails to honor its commitments. So that makes your exact point. There is no trust, and reaching a deal when there is trust is difficult. Reaching a deal when there is no trust, and I'm talking from a business perspective, is literally almost impossible. And I've seen this happen before. When trust is broken, it makes doing business almost impossible, and that's the situation they're in right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think Trump, he must underestimate the value of trust, or he makes these incredible assumptions that everybody wants to make a deal with him, because he's Trump and he makes deals, or he's the leader of the most powerful country on the planet, like he likes to say. But that's not enough. And again, there's things you can do to build trust. And I think the United States should have been doing it. But look at who we have to work with. Rubio. Rubio is not a Secretary of State that could build trust. Our CIA, sometimes the CIA does things like that, but Ratcliffe's is neocon. So, our CIA guy has definitely got a side that he chooses, and he doesn't like Iran. So, he's not the guy that can build a bridge. We have Vance, but he's not empowered, and he's also not trusted. The negotiators, Witkoff and Kushner, of course, are definitely not trusted. They are seen as Israeli agents. There's nobody in Israel that's reaching out to build trust, because honestly, Netanyahu is trying to not just sustain the war and the U.S. presence in the region. He's trying to go out. He wants to decapitate the regime once again. He wants no ballistic missiles, and of course, a zeroization of all nuclear capability.
No, that's gone. So I have good news for you. I did a post making fun of it. So Netanyahu, I should find my post, but he essentially I read a quote from him from a few months ago in the early days of the war, I think in April. And he was saying Iran can't have a nuclear program. They cannot have a ballistic missile program. That needs to be dismantled. They can't have a proxy network, and the regime needs to fall. That was in April.
Okay.
And then now the latest statements yesterday said, me and Trump talked. We agreed that we're on the same terms. The relationship is really strong between us, and we both agreed that Iran cannot have a nuclear program. They cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they have to get rid of their enriched uranium. So there's a massive shift in the realities. Okay. Yeah, and also there's another report from Channel 12. That's really good news to make you happy. Could be bullshit, just to be clear. But according to Channel 13, so I don't know the difference between Channel 12, Channel 13, Channel 14, but Netanyahu privately acknowledges that Israel currently has limited ability to influence Trump, and it has become difficult to pressure the US president, according to Channel 13. Now, a lot of people don't think this is true, and sometimes leaks are BS. I've been saying this for a while. I think, and I'm hoping, it's more wishful thinking, that yes, Israel's influence over the US has fallen drastically, and Trump is pretty upset being dragged into this war and the situation he's in. And I think he does blame Netanyahu for this war. But the only way we will know for sure is what happens next. And to see right now Trump talking about the Abraham's Accords, and to see him saying, to see reports that the war in Lebanon is one of the sticking points in the deal, that makes me question my own beliefs.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely, I think he does blame Israel for the things that are happening, because Trump never blames himself. He always has to blame someone outside. And Israel, he's publicly stated, as many government officials in the U.S. have stated, that Israel got us into this war. Israel, whether they lied us into the war or just convinced the United States to do it, that it was their idea, their impetus. So there's that. The other thing about Trump, he hates losers. He doesn't. He always says, "I don't want to be around like good-looking men because it makes me feel bad." He always says that, things like that. But really, what he really hates is losers. He doesn't want to associate with losers. He wants to beat them up. And Netanyahu, unfortunately for Netanyahu, is looking more and more like a loser. His government's falling apart. There will be early elections. He will be, whether he stands for election or not, he will not be remaining as prime minister. So this, Trump is not going to hitch his wagon to continuing. He will put airspace between him and Netanyahu. He will blame Netanyahu. He'll throw him under the bus if he needs to, in this environment of both the world, the world economy, blame it's crashing, and it's because of Trump's war and Israel's war. But Trump will happily blame Israel for it, and he's not connected. How friends will say, I'm with you thick and thin, right? I will stay with you. We'll be a friend. Maybe things go bad. Maybe we fight, but we are friends. That's not the relationship that Trump and Netanyahu have. This is a power relationship. This is a psychopathic relationship. This is a transactional relationship. And Netanyahu is bringing increasingly very little to the table. And his war has caused Trump to take a lot of blame, legitimate blame.
He's becoming a liability.
He's becoming a liability. And Trump doesn't like to hang around with liabilities. Unless
no businessman wants liabilities.
That's right. Unless Trump will do it if he can completely control the person, like Kash Patel. Kash Patel's liability. He's a political liability. There's just no way around it. But he is very loyal to Trump. He will do whatever. If Trump tells him to whatever, he will do it. So that's useful. You can keep Trump's view is if I can control them and use them, that's great. But if I can't control them and I can't really use them as I would like, and they are, going downhill in their power, prestige, whatever, which Netanyahu is, he'll cut them loose. But he also has a lot of other neocons singing the same song. He's got his neocon Republicans in the Senate saying, you don't need that deal's worse than Obama. You said you were smarter than Obama. Actually, your deal, whatever you call it, is like way worse than anything Obama.
I would punch these guys. First thing I would do as Trump is punch Lindsey Graham in the face. Lindsey Graham literally did a post. I've talked about it on the show, saying, "What's the point of this war if Iran's going to come out stronger, be able to control the Strait of Hormuz, have their ballistic missile program, and have the ability to strike the Gulf? We have to destroy that. Otherwise, what's the point of the war?" That's what everyone's been saying before the war. Now he drags Trump into this war. He's like, why do this war if we can't achieve the objectives?
Yeah, he is. Well, again, he never wore a uniform. He wouldn't have made it in the military. That's pretty clear. And he, is a typical neocon, power hungry, sitting behind a desk, designing these grand schemes and thinking that you can push a button and the U.S. military can make something happen. And we know it can't. I mean, that guy, I forget who it was, a Navy, one of the Navy commanders, Admiral, told the Congress, we can't escort ships in. Even if you tell us escort ships, we cannot do that until the strait is demilitarized. And he said, because it's narrow. Well, yeah, but the bottom line is if it's demilitarized, there's no need to escort ships. So the Navy has been given a mission that it can't do. And the guys like Lindsey Graham, they don't understand that. They go, wait a minute, the military works for me. You do what I tell you. You make this happen. But you can't ask for the impossible. And these guys are just out of touch. But Lindsey Graham's very loyal to Trump now. He wasn't earlier when Trump was running for president or anything, but he's loyal to Trump now. And Trump does value people that suck up to him. He really likes that. He'll keep you around.
So another piece of information that came in. So we have the Iran does not trust the US, even if a deal is signed. Iran is saying, according to Tasnim News, so there's a lot of reports that the deal does not include the unfreezing of assets now. It includes the unfreezing of assets at a later date. Tasnim is like, no, this is non-negotiable. The assets should be unfrozen now. If that doesn't happen, that's a red line. That's a breach of the deal. There is no agreement. So Iran wants the assets unfrozen right now. What I think is happening, and by the way, another thing to make you laugh, Karen, on a nice Sunday, according to Fars News, according to Iranian officials, American officials have privately told Tehran that to ignore Trump's posts because they are being made for, quote, primarily for promotional purposes and media consumption. That's according to Fars News. Yeah. To be honest, I said this before. I wouldn't find that hard to believe. But what I think is happening, Karen, is that they are discussing there's two sticking points. I think Lebanon should be resolved. I'd be shocked if they don't resolve Lebanon easily. Trump could rein in Netanyahu. But I think the issue is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran wants to charge a fee. The US and the world, most of the world doesn't want that. And the unfreezing of assets. Now, I think what's going to happen is there will be a deal and Iran will concede on charging a toll, at least for now, and the US will unfreeze assets, or vice versa. The US won't unfreeze assets and Iran will have a toll. I think these are the two, these are the two concessions that each side has. We'll see. Now, there is another option, and I'll get your thoughts on. And a lot of people have been telling me, Mario, there will not be a deal. We've been here before. This is not the first rodeo. We will have a stalemate, and a stalemate, it's not going to be a peaceful stalemate because Trump just we saw the post now of a missile saying, thank you for the attention to this matter. He's made multiple threats to bomb them if there's no deal. So if there's no deal, it's going to be very difficult for Trump to walk away without some sort of military action.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's going to be hard for Trump to walk away without military action. That's what I think. And I've always thought that when you send that kind of force, we're still flowing in forces into the region. We are still flowing them in. I think, I don't know how optimistic this is or if it's pessimistic, probably pessimistic. I think Trump, and by some of his statements, he's willing to wait 5 or 6 days. Well, that very conveniently puts it at the end of the Hajj. So we get our Hajj folks back to the countries they came from out of Saudi Arabia. They've flown home. And at that point, if nothing's resolved, Trump's ready to bomb and do all this stuff. And then he'll call it a big bomb. He'll call it a big major bombing. And then he can declare victory. But if he makes a deal, and we've already seen talking about it this week, this deal, and the criticism from the neocons, the criticism from Israel, and those are the voices he mostly listens to. You know, he's not surrounded by Joe Kent's and Tulsi Gabbard. He was, but he didn't really like them too close to him. But now they're not even in the administration. He's surrounded with guys like Gorka, guys like Stephen Miller and things like that. These guys are Israeli hacks, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they don't care about America. They care about Israel only. That's their primary thing. And Israel is telling them, regardless of what they're telling Trump, what the Israelis are telling all the folks around Trump, that we must continue this war. We are not done in southern Lebanon. We actually have been slowed down, which is they're trying to get finished in Lebanon. You know, the Israelis are trying, they're picking up the pace of their destruction. They're telling more and more villages to leave and don't come back. They're blowing up the buildings. They're doing the Gaza thing, and they're rushing it because they think they might have to stop. And they have no intention of pulling back from any, even if they have to have a totally wasteland kind of barrier zone or, safety zone of some sort. They have no intention of releasing control of property they've stolen from South Lebanon. So, and that's a matter of, for Netanyahu and his people, it's a matter of, existentialism, whatever, national security. So that message is all Trump is hearing. Your friends, we got you this office. We love you, Mr. Trump. We got you elected. We got rid of Thomas Massey for you. We have made sure all of the Congress smart lock steps into what you want to do. You control them. We control Congress, and we do that for you, Mr. Trump. So you need to think about our needs. And that's what he's hearing. He is not hearing that, hey, the United States is in bad shape in terms of their military capability right now in the face of a renewed combat operation with Iran. Iran does have, even without their so-called, new weapons that they keep hinting at. I don't know what they're hinting at, but even if you take the capability Iran had at the beginning, the first 3 weeks of war, that's all been rebuilt and better. So, and they know how it works because they already practiced on us and they saw how we reacted and what we did. Plus they removed 14? They've ruined 13 or 14 of 17 bases in the region. So we can't even operate from there anymore. That's a reduction of targets. Now they can target, more of our ships and more of our operating aircraft. This situation is not good for the United States. Who is telling Trump that the current balance of power in the region is not favorable to the United States of America? I can tell you it's not Netanyahu's people. It's not Stephen Miller. It's not his who's his chief of staff, the lady who used to work for Netanyahu years ago.
Yeah, I don't know.
Susie Wiles. It's
Oh
not
yeah,
Susie.
she worked for Netanyahu.
Yeah, she worked on his I think either his last reelection campaign. I think it was his last reelection campaign. If it wasn't, it was the one before that, but I'm pretty sure it was the last one. Yeah, she was a consultant and worked for him.
2020, Wiles traveled to Israel with a team of Trump's political advisors to assist Netanyahu's re-election campaign. How it's all intertwined. Jesus Christ, that's crazy.
And these are the folks that talk to Trump all the time. These are the people he listens to. So you cannot. I mean, look, we can only take in so much information. Some people are obsessed with learning all kinds of things, and they want to see what everybody's talking about. That's not Trump, and he doesn't have time. No president has time to do that. What the president has time to do is he appoints these advisors and he lets them help him. But all of his advisors are neocons, and all the ones that weren't neocons no longer work in the administration. The congressmen that he likes are neocons. The congressmen and senators that he hates and he's tried to primary, those are the ones that are advocating for bringing troops home, basically doing the MAGA thing that he promised he would do that he didn't do. So you say, well, we know what they're telling him. We know what Netanyahu's telling him. What does Trump then himself think? Well, he wants to look good. But how can he? And if they tell him, hey, Mr. Trump, we need you to fight this thing. Don't end this war on this. You're getting a bad deal. That's what they're telling him. Well, he agrees. Let's bomb him again and I'll end on a good deal. He's trying to sell this current bad deal for the United States. It's not a bad deal for the United States. We screwed up. We shouldn't have gone into this thing. We're lucky to get a deal at all. Okay. That we can say is a deal, but it is a bad deal. Iran gets almost everything they want. They've conceded very little. Some would say they've conceded nothing. And the United States is the one making the concessions. Okay, we'll move our troops away. We'll lift sanctions or whatever. So it's not a good deal. Trump senses that. And of course, he's hearing it from all of his friends around him. He needs to talk to somebody who can say to him, Mr. Trump, there was a big mistake made. You shouldn't have gone to war. And you got to admit that. And if you can't admit it, it's I don't know. But if he would admit that, if he would kind of think about that was a mistake, and that all we really want is things to get back to February 27th, then from there you can build an agreement. Then you can say, you know what, maybe we can build some trust. He's doing nothing to build trust. He's doing nothing to really deal with the real concerns. He is not claiming responsibility for starting the war. That was an illegal war. Okay, you don't just attack people based on lies. Well, actually, if you're the United States of America, we have a long track record of doing that, but it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. And if Trump was a man, okay, a generic man, a good person, a person with character, if he was that person, then he would sit and he would realize this, you know what, sometimes when you make a mistake, you have to correct the mistake. And if you hurt people because of your lies and your ambition and your greed and your bad friends that you listened to that told you to jump off a cliff and you did, that would be Netanyahu, then you have to kind of repudiate that. And you got to kind of, in a diplomatic way, say sorry. Well, Trump, when has Trump ever said sorry? Have you ever heard the man? He thinks saying sorry is a sign of weakness, and he will never do it. So
I think him signing, he'll never say sorry, but his sorry is him, like he has his own way of not saying sorry, but kind of fixing a mistake. And I think if he does walk away or accepts a deal that is not a great deal, which Iran won't give him a great deal, I think that's even better than a sorry. I would give him credit for that because he's facing a lot of influences not to, even though I don't.
I will give him credit if he does that. And I actually, based on the weekends, looking at the news, at first I was, on Friday night, very uncomfortable. I thought they were going to go to war. But then on Saturday, all the stuff through Saturday and even Sunday morning, I thought, he is really going to do a deal. And it really is a deal that we could take because we have to take it. But the way he's presenting it is positively. He's spinning it. So his supporters will totally buy it. They'll buy anything. He could say moon's made out of green cheese and all the MAGA would say, yeah, man, that's some great stuff. We should go up there and get some of that green cheese. That's fantastic. Because they love him and they will take what he says. So And that's where I was earlier today until about an hour ago. And then you see the little, he sent out another Truth Social thing, not the bomb, but there was something else. And it was basically, well, I'm going to give him 4 or 5 days. And then at that point, I think, he's listening too much to the pro-war crowd. And once the Hajj is over and those folks have gone back home and Saudi Arabia has reaped the benefits of hosting another successful Hajj, then, he'll be ready to drop bombs. We are still flowing troops into the region. We are flowing capability into the region. This is what tells me he wants to use that. But again, that's my prejudice. Yeah. I believe that the politicians, president, once they commit troops, they really, really, really have a hard time saying, oh, I made a mistake in committing them. They won't say that, but in pulling them back without utilizing them. The problem is he's utilizing our military to death, not physical death, but, our supply lines are.
I was just talking to a few guests how they're delaying the weapon shipments to Europe, Japan, and Taiwan.
They're being reduced.
That should be on every front page of the U.S. news outlets, but it's not. That's what the American voters should be caring about, not about Iran having a nuclear weapon, which could be easily resolved, in my opinion. I don't know. Actually, could have been easily resolved. Now, I don't know. Maybe Iran is more keen to get a nuclear weapon now after this war. The post maybe you're referring to that Trump put out 3 hours ago, if I make a deal with Iran. So he put the long post first, that the deal is near, should happen, we should sign it by tomorrow. That was yesterday. He made another long post about it today. Yeah, exactly. And he's talking about diplomacy and improving relations with Iran. Things could improve. Today he says, if I make a deal with Iran, it will be a good and proper one, not like the one made by Obama, which gave Iran massive amounts of cash. So he brings that up. It makes it hard to it makes it hard to unfreeze assets. That's my issue. So when he reminds people of Obama and how he didn't like the cash, how can he unfreeze assets now?
That's right.
And clear an open path to a nuclear weapon. Our deal is the exact opposite, but nobody has seen it, which is right, or knows what it is. It isn't even fully negotiated yet. Yikes. So don't listen to losers who are critical about something they don't know nothing about. Unlike those before me who should have solved this problem many years ago, I don't make bad deals. I think this is all this, the distractions, etc., is all part of the strategy to just flood people with information. There will be a deal. No one will have any clue. I'm not talking about us. The average American will have seen so many reports, so many posts, will have no idea what the deal will include, and then we'll get distracted by Cuba. That would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, he definitely is looking for something that will look more like a snatch and grab that we did in Venezuela. He would like that because he is aware, I think, of his popularity dropping because of this war. He finally has waken up to high gas prices, and Americans don't like that. We drive a lot. We don't have a lot of money. Our Americans are strapped financially. I mean, this has been something we've watched for a decade or more. So even though Trump is wealthy and he doesn't really see that, he has been informed that the Americans are not happy. So I think he would love to wash his hands of it. And that's why I was thinking, oh my God, maybe there will be a deal. But, the other thing is the other sticking point of Lebanon. Israel they sign stuff. They say they'll do stuff, but they never do. Israel does exactly what Israel wants to do. And if they want to kill and murder and genocide, that's what they do. And we support them whatever they do. We provide them the bulldozers if that's what they need, the bombs, the bomblets, the white phosphorus, whatever they need, we give it to them. So they are not, is this a two-way? Is the U.S. signing something with Iran? What is Israel signing? Israel seems to be, well, I'm going to convince Trump not to do this or to do this other thing. Does Israel sign on? How is any ceasefire in Gaza or Lebanon going to be dealt with?
You don't think Trump could rein in Netanyahu?
Oh my God, no. He on a good day, he might have 20% control. No. Netanyahu is he's a master of manipulation. Look at the guy's 20, 30 years of serving as the leader, all the machinations of politics in Israel, the machinations of American politics. He is a master of all these things, and he sees himself that way. He does not see himself as a lackey of Trump. People could argue, they say, oh, well, it's the U.S. leading Israel, or it's the Israel leading the U.S., and there's all these different people have different views. But Netanyahu's view, as he has communicated it repeatedly, usually in Hebrew and not in English, his view is he controls Washington. He controls the United States. He controls the Congress. That's what he says. So in his mind, he controls it. Now, Trump may say, oh, and he did say just the other day, he said, Netanyahu will do whatever I tell him to do. That's what Trump said. Who do you think is more correct? Netanyahu, who says, I control Washington, they do what I tell him, or Trump, who says, Netanyahu will do whatever I say?
I think it changed. I think it changed. I think it was Israel. It's fluctuated over the years. The reason I think Trump has more influence now is there's a few reasons. Despite the donors, despite, you make a very good point. The donors would go to him, hey, we got rid of Massey for you, spent all these millions of dollars. They need to ask for something in return. Because if he doesn't please them, they stop throwing the money at these things. But the reason it's shifting is, number one, I think Israel went too far this time around. Trump, his personality, he hates getting tricked or getting misled or someone harming him politically. And I think he felt lied to by Netanyahu, number one. Number two is he knows the sentiment is shifting within the US. Number three, people are, the whole narrative, including people like Tucker and stuff, his friends, are saying how Netanyahu controls him. That would trigger Trump and make him say, he's even made a post against it. Yeah. And another one is, I think politically, Netanyahu is very unpopular in the US. Politically, Trump is extremely popular in Israel. So Trump has a lot more impact for Netanyahu domestically, politically, than Netanyahu could have in the US. So that's why I think these factors will outweigh the factors of the donors flooding money with Trump and winning him the Edward guy instead of Massey. But it's a toss. Like, I could be wrong. When I see Trump put out a post or report, come out, I think a report came out that Trump asked Gulf countries to join the Abraham Accords. I'm like, what does that have to do with American interests? What does that have to do with anything you're trying to do in getting out of the worst strategic mistake in our generation from a US perspective? And when I see reports about one of the sticking points being Lebanon, I'm like, really? Like, we have the Strait of Hormuz, we have the unfreezing of assets, we have American bases in the region, we have the nuclear program, where we're talking about Lebanon and Hezbollah, should be one of the easiest problems to solve. So when I see things like this, I start questioning my stance. But
the Abraham Accords thing, because I just found that out. You said that, and it's
crazy. Yeah, it came from Axios.
But the Abraham Accords are envisioned as a security architecture, an endogenous security architecture for the Middle East. So Middle Eastern countries would work with Israel and make everybody happy and secure. And what's really happening is Iran, with China and Russia support, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, which has strong relations with Pakistan, growing relations with Iran, despite this war, and Qatar, and even Kuwait, and even the UAE, although the UAE is torn, obviously, because they invested in Israel or vice versa. So they really, really don't like it. But the big players, other than the UAE in the Gulf, are looking eastward to a new security architecture, and one that profits, and one that utilizes the benefit that the Strait of Hormuz offers for the whole world. The undersea cables, obviously all of the traffic that flows in the oil and all that. So, Iran has stepped up. They have a plan. It may not be perfect. They now have organized a process with Oman that they can, whether you call it tolls or fees or navigation fees or whatever you do, they have an organization, a structure. What I'm saying is they're bureaucratizing and maturing control of that strait. And they're stepping up and saying to the Gulf Coast, or the Gulf neighbors, they're saying to their Arab neighbors, you have chosen the wrong friends. Look what happened. They didn't protect you. They didn't respect you. They don't respect you. They take your money and they provide nothing. Why don't we work together in our region and make a new security architecture? That's actually being done. That's happening. That's not being talked about. That's being put in place. So That's probably why he brought up the Abraham Accords, because probably Netanyahu reminded him that, hey, we have this great plan for how we're going to have security in the area, and the U.S. won't have to have a heavy footprint there because we'll have these Abraham Accords and we'll all be friends. Well, the Abraham
That's so far from reality.
That's right, it is, and the UAE is an example of why that really is not a workable solution. And part of it again is back to trust. Who trusts the Israelis? Who trusts Assad? You know, you trust them to put their interests first. You trust them to be effective and devious and creative and all these other adjectives. You can trust them for that, but you cannot trust them to hold their word. You cannot trust them to figure out where common ground is and then stand with you on that common ground. Nobody expects
Look what they did to the UAE president. Netanyahu was like, I came and visited the UAE president. And then the media's like, and Shin Bet and Mossad head of Mossad and Shin Bet came. How is that how you treat allies?
Yeah, that's not how you treat allies. And for Israel, there are no allies. Even the United States is not an ally. That's why they invest so much in AIPAC and other ways of controlling our politicians. And they have for 70 years. I mean, this is not new. But they do that because we really aren't their allies. And we feel that we are. Americans, the average American, well, they're losing it with the younger generations, but the average person over 60 really thinks Israel is an ally of the United States. But Israel looks at the United States and they don't trust us. And it's a smart way to be. We should not trust them. That we would be smarter if we didn't trust Israel. But Israel does not trust us. And, Netanyahu's all over this. Why do they have to buy Paramount? Why do they have to buy TikTok? Why do they have to have, control over the First Amendment? They've got that guy, the new counterterrorism czar with the British accent. Oh, I can't think of his name. Telling us that our First Amendment is obsolete and we really have to change it because it might harm Israel. So Israel has to invest in these things because they cannot count on us. This is, we say, well, why is AIPAC, why do they have to spend all this money to get rid of Thomas Massie? Thomas Massie, really, honestly, how much is that important? But for Israel, every little bit counts because they do not trust us as fellows, as friends or as allies. And, but we Americans do. We think, oh, Israel's our ally. They'll do stuff. They'll do stuff that's in our interest. But of course, they won't. So anyway, you can't trust them. The neighbors know it. Americans increasingly know it. And I wanted to take issue with one of your guests that I watch. I don't get to see all your shows, but you had your IDF guy on, your former IDF
Jonathan
guy.
Conricus. Yeah.
Yes, and he said something that I don't think is exactly well. I think there's evidence to the contrary. He said that Iran the society is all fighting with each other and they have big problems. They're upset and devastated and their military is really hurt more than we know. And then he said Israel, on the other hand, is unified, strong, powerful, and the military has plenty left. And that's really not even
I must have missed that. I must have tuned out. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, he was. I'm paraphrasing, but he was presenting Israel as really surviving this latest war better than any war they've ever had before. People are excited about it, whatever, and their economy wasn't harmed, and that's not real. So that was pure propaganda. Talking about how great Israel has
the economy is doing well, but the military spread, from what I've seen, the metrics, GDP is doing well, unemployment is good, but the military is stretched very thin. Apparently, they're on the verge of crisis.
Unemployment is high. Yes, you can't look. First off, they kicked out at the beginning of this war, as they usually do, but a lot of the Palestinian workers couldn't come back over and work. So that's also people that buy things from stores and stuff. So the on the street economy is not good. Okay, and all the people that could get out of the country, at the beginning of the Gaza thing, they canceled exit flights no Israelis were allowed to leave at the beginning of after October 7th. They wanted to leave because, my God, that was like 9/11. They keep telling us that was a major thing. And it was scary. So people wanted to leave. Netanyahu, they closed the airports. You could not leave. That's why they were taking yachts to Crete and Greece and whatnot. They were hopping on boats. So people who can leave, who have 2 passports or enough money in Israel, and that's quite a few. Percentage-wise, that's more than your average country in the Middle East, have left or wanted to leave. If their kids were already out of the country, they are helping them stay out of the country, right? They're they're hoping that their kids don't have to be in the IDF now that IDF terms are expanded, and you're hearing about the high suicide rates and the things that they're doing, which many parents, they may be rabid Zionists, but many parents don't really want their kids to have to experience traumatic things like some of the stuff that soldiers have to do. And of course, we know this as Americans because our soldiers have gotten in situations of torturing people. We've sent them to jail for it. But even the ones we didn't send to jail, there's suffering that goes on after, and suicides and that kind of thing. So Israel's having big problems. And there was a newspaper article local to an Israeli one talking about the brain drain, which has actually been going on for a while, even before October 7th.
That's
and
the big concern, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're not keeping the kids, if you're dual, and you're two people with multiple
Dual
passports
citizens.
are able to,
Yeah.
yes, if your dual citizens are able to go to another country to stay safe and not really contribute to the war effort, what's the chances they'll come back? In Ukraine, the people left. How many Ukrainians who went to Europe are coming back? Very few, very few. The longer
The war's not over there, but no, I
know,
agree with your point.
the longer they're away, the less likely they're coming back.
Exactly. I've loved ones that left Ukraine, so absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you can't count on if peace breaks out, the population will flow back. And the folks that are having the children, and every country has different demographics, but it's the Haredi, the ones who won't serve in the IDF are the ones that have so many children that the IDF needs. Okay, the ones that will serve in the IDF have 1 or 2 kids. They're not really they're like Western population, 2.1 kids per woman or whatever. So all of this does not bode well. And on top of that, you've got the global BDS movement, which is just people choosing not to buy Israeli or occupied territories products, but
What's the BDS movement?
Oh my gosh, what does it stand for?
No, it doesn't mean what it stands for. What is it? What is the movement itself? You just explained it briefly.
It's a movement to identify Israeli products and products that are sold.
The boycott of Australian products.
Boycott, yes. So
a boycott of companies that do business in Israel, I think, will have Israeli owners or something. Yeah.
And Israeli products. So when the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador Huckabee, he goes, you need seedless watermelons and cherry tomatoes. You better thank Israel for creating seedless watermelons and cherry tomatoes, he said. And Netanyahu has also talked about the cherry tomatoes that were developed in Israel. But bottom line is, I don't know how much money they make from cherry tomatoes, but people are associating Israeli products bad. And they feel helpless to do anything about the genocide. They're not really particularly pleased with what Israel is doing everywhere. And so they say, well, what can I do? Well, I can't do anything, but you know what? I don't have to eat cherry tomatoes. But it goes far beyond that. I mean, Caterpillar, it got in big trouble, actually. People wrote to Congress. People in the United States said, we don't want to have Caterpillar sending a whole new, I don't know how many billions, it wasn't billions, I think it was several $100 million worth of bulldozers to Israel, because what are they going to do with those bulldozers? They're going to bulldoze Palestinian homes and property and wells and olive groves to settle illegally. So what I'm saying is, so the politicians are being affected by the BDS movement. And I've said this before, but once you get a 15-year-old kid or a 25-year-old kid or a 35-year-old person who doesn't really think about foreign policy, but somehow on their social media, they learned about hey, if you're not happy with the genocide that Israel's doing, you can boycott their products. Guess what? They don't revisit that. If once they make that decision to do it, they're not going to say when I'm 39, Israel's doing pretty good now, I'm not going to boycott. No, we don't have time for that. The average American, the average person in the world, they don't have time to track every little thing.
Like irreversible long-term damage, you're saying? I
think so. And this all impacts Israel's future. So, and look, Israelis know this better than anybody. So I thought the IDF guy, former IDF guy, I thought he was kind of pushing too hard on this idea that everything's great in Israel. It's really not. Israelis know it. And I think you're going to see some change internally, which what would be great is if Trump could shut down Netanyahu, pull back from Lebanon, leave Gaza alone, let people go in and help Gaza and feed them and give them medicine and shelter. If that happened and Israel, I'm not saying they have to retract to 1967, but if Israel would stop fighting everyone and focus on their own problems, they're talented people, just like any other country. They're well educated. They love their country. They can find a way to make it better. But to act like this war is not hurting Israel badly, very badly, and in the long term, that's an illusion. So,
No, I think what he is, I don't want to defend him because me and him disagreed on like 80 to 90% of the things. I think what he's referring to is he looks at the short-term indicators. So inflation, unemployment, GDP, and those for the year look pretty good. Investment, I don't know about foreign direct investments, but then what he doesn't understand, and where I agree with you because I've been vocal about this, is the long-term. So there's a term for it when Israelis leave their country. I can't emigration. I think it's called immigration. I think that's what they called it. So a lot of Israelis are leaving the country, and you make a very valid point. When they stay out of the country for a while, they'll get used to whatever country they're in. They might not come back home. Number two is there's also the sentiment around Israel as well. A lot of people in Israel are not happy with the way things are.
Yeah.
Number three is the sense of security is gone, especially with Iran coming out of this with their ballistic missile and proxy network. Not intact, but still there. And Hezbollah is going to get rearmed, but I would speculate it'll get rearmed again. So I think, yes, the long-term impact this is going to have, we haven't, you've gone through all of them really well. The economic impact is very significant. And I think Israel bit off more than they can chew. And I was speaking to someone that worked at Unit 8200, which is part of the IDF, the Mossad department. And we're having a discussion, and he told me something. He's like, Mario, Israel is great tactically, especially in assassinating people, but has been really bad strategically long-term. Since October 7th, there's been many tactical successes, and that's true. Got rid of a big chunk of Hamas, invaded 60% of Gaza, annexed more territory from the West Bank through the settlements, now controls territory in Syria, got rid of Assad, controls territory in Lebanon, got rid of Hezbollah, and managed to convince the US to bomb the hell out of Iran at the detriment of the US. They've achieved all those things, all tactical successes, one can argue. But strategically, Lebanon, the Lebanese people that don't like Hezbollah, they don't trust Israel after what happened in South Lebanon. Syria, someone replaced Assad, but someone that's going to be rebuilding the country by the looks of it, as much as you might dislike him. He's trying to rebuild the country. And then you look at Hamas is still there. And obviously Iran's going to come out stronger out of this because now they control the Strait of Hormuz, so that backfired badly, and the entire world sees Israel in a very bad light. Now that is the biggest loss, including their biggest supporter, the United States. That is the biggest loss for Israel.
It's and to the extent that they can recognize it and change course as a country, then that would be good. Look, of course they can do it. It's hard to say if they will. The problem, and this is a problem with the Zionism and the way the country has evolved. That even the most left, well, not the most left, but left and right all agree that we're surrounded by enemies and our enemies must die.
And there's barely any left, by the way. I checked it earlier today. It's like 15% of the population identifies left, 60% is right. I have a piece of breaking news. Sorry, Karen, just quickly. New York Times just came in now. Now, obviously, we've been having these breaking news the whole time, so taking them with a massive pinch of salt. According to the New York Times, the US and Iran have agreed in principle to a deal that would wind down the war, though a final approval from both sides could take days, a senior US official said. The deal would reopen the Strait of Hormuz and commit Iran to disposing of its highly enriched uranium, though how Iran would do so remains under negotiations. The agreement acts as a preliminary framework for future negotiations, not a final settlement. Iran's missile program and uranium enrichment are excluded from this deal to be discussed later. Nuclear issues will be renegotiated within 30 to 60 days post-agreement. If certified, Trump said the U.S. would end its blockade of Iranian ports. The war, which began late February, will has killed thousands, blah, blah, blah. So essentially what this says is there's a deal in principle. It takes days, so nothing today, obviously. The Strait of Hormuz will be reopened. Nothing about a toll, and nothing against the toll. So I would say it seems that toll is going to be part of it. It does mention the unfreezing of assets, and everything else will be delayed for later.
Lebanon?
And again, it goes back to where we were before. Nothing about Lebanon here, but I'm sure it doesn't mention it, but I'm very confident it's included. I just don't think, I think the reports about it being an issue is overrated. I don't think that will be the issue. I think the big issue is we don't know whether it will be solved, whether the unfreezing of assets will it be now or later, and around charging a fee. If there is a deal, hold on, CBS, one thing, CBS, U.S. intelligence reportedly believes Iran's supreme leader is operating from an undisclosed location with limited outside communication and is primarily reached through a network of couriers. U.S. officials said the communication difficulties inside Iran's leadership structure have slowed responses to proposals and negotiations with the Trump administration. Well, you should be ashamed that this is even the case, guys. Like, if you're negotiating with a country and they don't trust you so much that the leader can't even walk freely in the time of a ceasefire, it shows the state of affairs.
If he picks up a phone, they target him.
Exactly. That's what I mean. That's wrong. That's just wrong.
If you're going to fight your wars that way, and Israel fights their wars that way, we increasingly try to fight our wars that way, through assassinations. And President Trump constantly talks about the Iranian general he assassinated in Iraq in his first term. He brings that up all the time. So, politicians love it. That you are weakening yourself if that's how you conduct foreign policy, because, and we do it. We follow it up with action. So, that's, people trust your actions, not your words. So, honestly, I guess we'll know when the money gets unfrozen, and when the blockade, the U.S. blockade, pulls away and ships are tracked. We can watch where the ships are, and everybody in the world can see that the ships have moved away and have gone elsewhere. So when that happens, then I guess we'll know there's a peace deal, because honestly, you cannot trust them. It's part of why, that's a good point about how their leaders can't even come together and get on the phone or do a video conference, it's a 16-hour flight, so nobody wants to fly back and forth. I get that. But, you would think that mature adults could get in a room and communicate, but these guys can't, because Israel will take one of the others out, or we will take somebody out. And maybe they're worried.
Diplomacy is done. That's not how diplomacy is done.
No, it's not diplomacy. And so basically, you almost need a good faith action. And to me, a good faith action, the best one would be for Trump to say that since Netanyahu will do whatever Trump tells him, I heard Trump say that just yesterday, Netanyahu will do whatever, then Mr. Trump, why didn't you tell him to remove his troops from Lebanese territory? Go back to your borders, not the new borders that you've announced in Lebanon, because you stole that land. That's not legal. Go back to your original borders. You can, obviously if that's the wall, like in, the North Wall, and you're keeping the hordes away, then fine, line your folks up on your border. Don't shoot anybody. You could just look. Let's see if Netanyahu does that. He's not going to do that. Trump's not going to tell him to do that. But that would be a good faith. That would be something we would get peace. Because that's supposedly one of the 14 points or one of the 10 points, the ceasing of the Lebanon war. They're also, okay, you want to stay in Lebanon, why don't you back off Gaza? Why don't you let aid into Gaza? There's something Trump could ask him to do. What's the problem with that? Most Gazans are not armed. Hamas has been harmed greatly. I don't know how many Hamas are left, but, most of the people there are slowly dying of, exposure, disease, starvation.
What is Hamas? But Karen, what is Hamas? A bunch of guys with machine guns, like enough using that as an excuse for the atrocities in Gaza.
Exactly.
Like, what's left? They can't even fire any rockets into Israel anymore. It's been years?
No, that's exactly right. So why don't you? And again, if you want to hate Hamas and be real worried about them, go ahead and do that. But let's stop shooting mothers and children. Let's stop firing on reporters and medics that are responding to other things that you've dropped in Gaza. Now, I understand Hezbollah is well armed. You really hate them, and you've already made all these gains in southern Lebanon. Why doesn't Trump tell them to back off Gaza? They said they treated, well, again, bad strategy, with those folks that the flotilla, the second flotilla that just
Oh my
was
God.
intercepted. And I guess they intercepted in international waters. Okay, that's fine. Well, not really, but they did that. But then they publicly mistreated them. And these folks, my God, you could see who these are activists. Okay, these are not professional aid deliverers. These are not emergency responders. These people write, they do podcasts and they write articles. Okay, they just want to help people, but they're not really equipped to do it. A couple bags of food. Most of this was a political thing, and yet, what did the Israelis do? They publicly mistreated them, intercepted them far off the coast as if they were a big threat, as if they were actually going to provide something of value, like what, 1,000 calories to some poor Gazan that's starving. That's what they would do. So yeah, Trump, you've got grandkids. Why don't you tell Netanyahu, if he'll do anything you tell him back off Gaza, tell him to let the aid in, the food, the medicine. Let's stop these people from dying a slow death and treat their, not just their physical illness, but give them some peace. The part of their strategy, the IDF strategy, is
some
to
humanity. People are suffering from disease. Women are giving birth with no anesthesia. People having surgeries. Sickness. It's insane.
Like you pointed out that I think you shared that, and you mentioned it last time we talked. The little girls that were pulling a dead body, and this is how they play, because this is what they see.
A doll pretending it's a pretend play. It's a dead body, a doll.
Yeah,
holding on a stretcher.
So if that's where they're at, then obviously we should not be tolerating it. We should be stopping it. So yeah, Trump, wake up. There are things he can do, and those would be, I think, very welcomed by all of the Arab world and the rest of the world, and even people who hate Trump. He would gain so many points with the left if he didn't have to say I made a bad war or I'm not getting a good deal. He could say, you know what, Netanyahu owes me, and he does anything I tell him anyway because I'm the most powerful man in the world. I'm telling him to end the assault on Gaza, back off from his so-called yellow line where they own 60% of Gazan property, back way off, and let the world feed the Gazans. He could do that very easily. If Netanyahu does whatever he tells him, there you go. There's your trust builder right there. So see what happens.
Yeah.
He's not going to do it, but he could do it. That's actually within the realm of the possible. If they really cared about it. And since Trump isn't doing anything like that, that's why I think that this is all he'll continue to destroy instead of to build.
Yeah. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Karen, thanks for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Okay. Absolutely. Same here. See you later.
See you, Colonel. With Larry Johnson in an hour, just less than an hour. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with our regular Lieutenant Colonel Karen. Let me know what you think of the comments. In the comments, I'm going to go through them before my interview with Larry. I think you guys really enjoyed the conversation with the one before Anthony, Praveen. You guys really liked that conversation. I recommend you check out the one I did earlier today. I enjoyed it. The one with the former executive director of Human Rights Watch. I can't remember his name right now. But I enjoyed it because he gave me a good explanation on why is the world turning a blind eye towards Gaza. It's something I just don't get, because I don't like the explanation of like politicians are evil. It's like, I understand there's a lot of influence, but how can presidents, not only in the US but across the world, go to sleep knowing like something like what's happening in Gaza is going on, and they can stop it and they're not. So yeah, that says a lot. That bothers me, and I asked him that question. Anyway, guys, getting distracted by news that's coming in. I'll see you in an hour with Larry Johnson on. Bye.